The emergency beacon cut through the void of space like a scream in the darkness. Captain Zara Chen of the exploration vessel Harmony's Edge received the transmission while her ship drifted in the outer reaches of the Kepler 442 system, conducting routine surveys of potentially habitable worlds. The signal was weak, distorted by cosmic interference, but the universal friendship protocols embedded within it were unmistakable. Someone was calling for help using the ancient codes established by the Galactic Friendship Coalition, a loose alliance of peaceful species that had formed over 3 centuries ago to promote cooperation and mutual aid across the galaxy. Chen leaned forward in her captain's chair, her weathered hands gripping the armrests as the communications officer, Lieutenant Rodriguez, worked to clean up the transmission. The bridge of the Harmony's Edge hummed with quiet efficiency, its crew of 30 humans going about their duties with the calm professionalism that had made Earth's exploration fleet famous throughout known space. "Can you isolate the source?" Chen asked, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent 20 years navigating the dangerous frontier regions where few dared to venture. Rodriguez's fingers danced across his console, layers of static and interference peeling away like old paint. "Getting something, Captain." The signals originating from the Vale Nebula region, approximately 47 light-years from our current position. It's definitely Coalition emergency protocols, but there's something strange about it." The young officer's brow furrowed as he studied the readouts. The friendship codes are being transmitted alongside what appears to be tactical data. Ship positions, weapon signatures, casualty reports. This isn't just a distress call, it's a battle report. Chen felt a chill run down her spine. The Galactic Friendship Coalition had been established specifically to avoid conflicts. Member species shared resources, knowledge, and assistance freely, operating under the principle that cooperation was far more beneficial than competition. Wars between coalition members were virtually unheard of. "Transfer the data to my personal terminal," Chen ordered. "And get me a direct line to Earth Command. Priority Alpha." As Rodriguez complied, Chen pulled up the decoded transmission on her screen. The message was fragmented, clearly sent under desperate circumstances, but the key details were clear enough. The Zelani Republic, one of the Coalition's founding members, was under attack in their home system. Their peaceful trade fleets were being systematically destroyed by an unknown aggressor force. The Zelani were herbivorous beings, roughly humanoid in shape but with delicate, almost crystalline features and a natural bioluminescence that made them appear ethereal in low light. They had been among the first species to welcome humans into the Coalition, offering advanced medical technologies in exchange for Earth's agricultural expertise. Chen had met several Zelani delegates during diplomatic missions, and they had struck her as gentle, thoughtful beings who approached every problem with careful consideration and endless patience. The idea of anyone attacking the Zelani seemed absurd. They had no military to speak of, relying instead on their reputation for neutrality and their valuable medical knowledge to keep them safe. Their ships were designed for exploration and trade, not warfare. But the transmission told a different story. 17 Zelani vessels destroyed. Colonies on 3 worlds under bombardment. Millions of civilians fleeing in panic. And, at the center of it all, a single repeated phrase that made Chen's blood run cold: "They call us weak. They take what is ours because they believe we cannot stop them." The communication with Earth Command came through 30 minutes later. Admiral Sarah Reeves appeared on Chen's screen, her steel-gray hair pulled back in a regulation bun and her expression grim. Behind her, Chen could see the bustling activity of the Strategic Operations Center, where dozens of officers were coordinating Earth's far-flung exploration and defense fleets. "Captain Chen, I assume you've intercepted the Zelani transmission," Reeves said without preamble. "Yes, Admiral. The friendship protocols were properly authenticated. The Zelani are requesting immediate assistance under Coalition mutual defense agreements." Reeves nodded slowly. "We've been monitoring the situation for the past 6 hours. The attacking force appears to be the Krokan Empire, a militaristic species from beyond the galactic rim. They've never been part of the Coalition, and our diplomatic overtures have been ignored or rejected. Intelligence suggests they view the Coalition's peaceful nature as weakness to be exploited." Chen felt her jaw tighten. The Krokan were a name whispered in spaceports and exploration outposts, a species that had supposedly remained isolated in the galaxy's outer regions for good reason. Reports described them as aggressive expansionists who solved disputes through conquest and regarded diplomacy as a sign of cowardice. "What are my orders, Admiral?" "You're to proceed immediately to the Vale Nebula and rendezvous with the rest of the response fleet. The Harmony's Edge may be an exploration vessel, but you have the most experienced crew in that sector, and we need every ship we can get.
Chen's mind raced.
The Harmony's Edge was equipped with standard defensive systems, but it was designed for long-range exploration, not combat. Her crew was trained in first contact protocols, xenobiology, and crisis management, not warfare. Admiral, with respect, we're not a warship. My crew, your crew are humans, Captain, Reeves interrupted, her voice carrying a weight that Chen had never heard before.
And humans have something the rest of the galaxy doesn't understand yet. The Krogan see our peaceful nature and assume we're weak.
They see our friendship with species like the Zilani and think we're naive. They're about to learn why our homeworld is classified as a Class 12 death world, and why every human ship carries military-grade defensive systems as standard equipment. The transmission ended, leaving Chen staring at a blank screen. Around her, the bridge crew had fallen silent, all eyes turned toward her. She could see the mixture of fear and determination in their faces. None of them had signed up for a war, but the friendship codes were sacred to humanity.
When a friend called for help, humans answered.
Chen stood slowly, her voice carrying throughout the ship's communication system.
All hands, this is the captain. We have received a verified distress call under Coalition friendship protocols. Our allies, the Zilani Republic, are under attack by a hostile force. We are proceeding immediately to provide assistance.
She paused, looking around the bridge at her crew.
I know this isn't what any of us expected when we left Earth.
We're explorers, scientists, diplomats. But sometimes being human means standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves. The Zilani welcomed us into the galactic community with open arms. They shared their knowledge and resources freely. Now they're in trouble, and they've called on us for help. Rodriguez raised his hand slowly.
Captain, what exactly are we supposed to do against a military fleet?
We have defensive weapons, but nothing designed for ship-to-ship combat. Chen smiled, and there was something cold in the expression that made several crew members shift uncomfortably.
Lieutenant, you're thinking like an explorer.
The Krogan are expecting to face frightened civilians and peaceful traders. They're not expecting to encounter humans who grew up on a world where everything from the weather to the wildlife is actively trying to kill them. They're not expecting to face a species that spent thousands of years perfecting the art of warfare before they ever left their homeworld. She turned to the navigation console.
Helm, set course for the Veil Nebula. Maximum warp.
Communications, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them that the Harmony's Edge is en route to provide assistance, and that we're requesting immediate access to the Terran Defense Fleet emergency protocols. As the ship jumped to warp speed, Chen settled back into her chair and pulled up the tactical data from the Zilani distress call. The Krogan fleet consisted of approximately 30 warships, all heavily armed and designed for conquest. They had been systematically destroying Zilani infrastructure, taking what they wanted and leaving destruction in their wake. But there was something the Krogan didn't know. Something that no species outside the Coalition truly understood about humans. Earth wasn't just another peaceful member world. It was a death world, a planet so hostile to life that simply surviving there required adaptability, resilience, and a capacity for violence that most civilized species had evolved away from millions of years ago. Humans had joined the Coalition as explorers and diplomats, sharing their agricultural knowledge and their talent for making friends with almost anyone. They had been welcomed as a peaceful addition to the galactic community. But underneath that peaceful exterior lay something that the galaxy had forgotten existed, a species forged by predation, competition, and constant struggle. The Krogan were about to discover what happened when you threatened humanity's friends. They were about to learn why humans were the only species in the galaxy that still remembered how to fight a war. Chen opened a private communication channel to Earth Command and began typing a message that would change everything. Request immediate mobilization of all available Terran Defense Fleet assets. The friendship protocols have been invoked.
Authorization, Chen, Zifi Captain, serial number 2847 Alpha. Priority code, Omega Black.
She paused, her fingers hovering over the final words of the message.
Once she sent this, there would be no going back.
The galaxy would see a side of humanity that had been carefully hidden for decades. Message continues, the Zilani call us friends, and friends of humanity don't face their enemies alone.
Recommend full deployment. Show them why we call our homeworld a death world.
As the message transmitted toward Earth at faster-than-light speeds, Chen leaned back in her chair and watched the stars streak past the viewports.
Somewhere in the Vale Nebula, the Krokan Empire was congratulating itself on an easy victory over a peaceful species.
They had no idea that their actions had just awakened something terrible. The distress call had been sent to friends. But what was coming in response would be a reminder that some friends were more dangerous than any enemy.
Fleet Admiral Krogar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Void Render, watching with satisfaction as another Zilani transport vessel exploded in brilliant orange flames against the darkness of space.
The delicate, crystalline beings had offered no meaningful resistance, their ships scattering like frightened insects before his war fleet. The Krokan Empire had spent centuries conquering weak civilizations across the galactic rim, but this was different.
This wasn't just about territory or resources. This was about making a statement to the entire Galactic Friendship Coalition that their age of peaceful cooperation was ending.
Krogar's species had evolved on a harsh world of constant warfare, where only the strongest survived and diplomacy was considered a character flaw. Standing nearly 3 meters tall with chitinous armor covering their naturally muscled frames, the Krokan had never encountered a problem they couldn't solve through superior firepower. Their philosophy was simple: the strong took what they wanted, and the weak accepted their fate. "Admiral, the orbital defense platforms around Zalera Prime have been neutralized," reported Commander Vex, Krogar's second-in-command.
"Resistance is minimal. The Zilani are broadcasting surrender offers on all frequencies."
Krogar's mandibles clicked together in what passed for laughter among his people.
"Ignore their pleas. The Coalition needs to learn that friendship is no substitute for strength.
Continue the bombardment of their industrial centers.
Take what we need and leave the rest as a warning to others."
The Zilani homeworld hung before them like a blue-green jewel, its surface dotted with the bioluminescent cities that were the species' greatest architectural achievement. Each city pulsed with soft, natural light that had taken centuries to cultivate. The sight would have moved any civilized being to wonder, but the Krokan saw only targets. "Sir," interrupted the communications officer, "we're receiving multiple incoming transmission bursts from the galactic core regions."
The Coalition appears to be mobilizing some kind of response. Krogar turned, his 4 eyes focusing on the younger officer with predatory intensity. "What kind of response? Are the peaceful merchants of the trade unions sending their cargo haulers to reason with us? Perhaps the scholars of the academic consortium plan to debate us into submission?"
The bridge crew's laughter was cut short when the sensor operator's voice cracked with sudden urgency.
"Admiral, I'm reading massive hyperspace distortions approaching our position. Multiple ship signatures, closing fast. The energy readings, they don't match any Coalition vessel types in our database."
Krogar moved to the sensor station, his heavy footsteps echoing in the sudden silence of the bridge. The display showed a 3-dimensional tactical map of the local star system, with his fleet's 30 warships arranged in standard battle formation around Zalera Prime. But now, at the edge of the sensor grid, new contacts were appearing with alarming regularity.
1 ship became 5. 5 became 20. 20 became 50. The hyperspace distortions continued, each new arrival adding to a growing fleet that defied classification. "What am I looking at?"
Krogar demanded, his voice carrying the edge that had made him feared throughout the Empire. The sensor operator's hands trembled as they worked the controls.
"Unknown vessel types, Admiral.
The energy signatures are unusual. High-powered drives, advanced shielding systems, and weapon signatures that don't match anything in our threat assessment databases. They appear to be moving in coordinated formation groups."
Commander Vex approached the tactical display, studying the incoming fleet with the eye of a career military officer. Could these be hidden Coalition defense forces? Some kind of secret military arm we didn't know about?
Before Krogar could respond, the communications officer turned from their station with confusion written across their features.
"Admiral, we're being hailed by the lead vessel.
The signal is using standard diplomatic frequencies, but the language, it's not any Coalition dialect I recognize."
"Put it through," Krogar ordered. If these newcomers wanted to talk, he would give them the opportunity to surrender before he destroyed them.
The main viewscreen flickered to life, revealing a human face that immediately put every Krokan on the bridge on edge. The being was smaller than they expected, with soft features and none of the natural armor or weaponry that marked a proper warrior species. But there was something in the eyes, a cold intelligence that spoke of dangerous capability. "This is Admiral Sarah Reeves of the Terran Defense Fleet," the human said, her voice carrying across the bridge with crisp authority.
You are ordered to cease all hostile actions against the Zolani Republic immediately and withdraw from this system. This is your only warning.
Krogar's mandibles spread wide in aggressive display.
I am Fleet Admiral Krogar of the Krogan Empire.
We do not take orders from unknown species who hide behind diplomatic titles. You will withdraw immediately or be destroyed alongside these pitiful creatures you seek to defend. The human's expression didn't change, but somehow the temperature on the bridge seemed to drop several degrees. Admiral Krogar, you have attacked a coalition member species under the protection of the Terran government. The Zolani invoked friendship protocols, and humanity has answered. You now face the consequences of threatening our allies.
Humanity?
Vex whispered, pulling up species classification data on his personal terminal.
Admiral, the database lists humans as a recently discovered species.
Agricultural specialists and exploration crew.
Threat assessment, minimal. They're classified as peaceful traders.
Krogar looked back at the human on the screen, noting the military uniform and the confidence in her bearing. Something didn't match the intelligence reports, but he had faced down hundreds of species in his career. Size and strength were what mattered in the end. Your threat assessment is accurate, Krogar said, addressing the human directly.
You are a minor species of farmers and explorers.
You have no business in a military conflict. Leave now, and we will allow you to flee with your lives. Admiral Reeves was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, there was something almost like pity in her voice.
Admiral Krogar, you've made two critical errors. First, you attacked our friends. Second, you assumed that humans are weak because we choose to be peaceful. The transmission cut off, leaving the Krogan bridge in tense silence.
Around them, the tactical display showed the human fleet continuing to arrive, their numbers now exceeding 80 vessels of various sizes and configurations. Admiral, the sensor operator called out, voice tight with growing alarm, the human ships are moving into attack formation. I'm reading massive power spikes across their fleet.
Whatever weapons systems they're carrying, they're charging them now.
Krogar studied the tactical display with the eye of an experienced commander. The human ships were arranging themselves in patterns he didn't recognize, not the standard battle lines that most civilized species employed, but something more complex and fluid. Each ship seemed to know exactly where it belonged in relation to the others, moving with a precision that spoke of extensive combat experience.
Launch fighters, Krogar ordered.
All ships are to target the largest human vessels.
We'll show these farmers what real warriors can accomplish.
The Krogan fighter craft swept out from their carriers in dense swarms, their angular shapes bristling with weapons designed to tear through enemy hulls. They had never encountered resistance they couldn't overwhelm through sheer firepower and aggressive tactics. But, as they approached the human fleet, something unexpected happened.
The human ships didn't scatter or attempt to retreat.
Instead, they began to move like living things, each vessel flowing through space with an organic grace that defied conventional tactical doctrine. The first wave of Krogan fighters met a wall of defensive fire unlike anything in their combat experience. Instead of the discrete energy beams or projectile weapons they expected, the human ships unleashed streams of accelerated particles that turned space itself into a killing field. Fighter after fighter simply vanished, not destroyed so much as disintegrated by weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics.
What kind of technology are they using? Commander Vex demanded, watching his fighter squadrons disappear from the tactical display with growing horror.
The sensor operator's voice was barely above a whisper. Admiral, I'm detecting massive gravimetric distortions around the human ships.
They appear to be manipulating local spacetime.
And, the weapons, the energy outputs are off the scale.
These aren't exploration vessels, sir.
These are warships disguised as something else. As if to emphasize the point, one of the larger human vessels fired what appeared to be a single projectile at a Krogan heavy cruiser. The shot moved too fast to track visually, but its impact was devastating. The cruiser's shields collapsed instantly, its hull armor peeled away like paper, and secondary explosions began tearing the ship apart from the inside.
Impossible, Krogar breathed. That was a single shot. No weapon system can generate that kind of destructive power.
But, even as he spoke, more human ships were opening fire, each shot delivered with surgical precision. The Krogan fleet, which had seemed overwhelming against the peaceful Zolani, suddenly found itself outgunned by vessels that shouldn't have posed any threat at all. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving data bursts from our surviving scouts.
The human fleet, it's still growing. More ships are arriving every minute. Current count is approaching 150 vessels."
Krogar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of warfare: doubt. The humans weren't fighting like any species he had encountered. Their ships moved with purpose and coordination that spoke of a unified command structure and extensive combat experience. Their weapons technology was clearly far in advance of anything the Krogan Empire possessed.
And they kept coming.
"Admiral," Commander Vex said quietly, "perhaps we should consider a tactical withdrawal."
"We can return with reinforcements, no." Krogar's roar echoed across the bridge. "The Krogan Empire does not retreat from inferior species. Signal all ships to concentrate fire on the human command vessel."
"If we can destroy their leadership," the tactical display lit up with new contacts as another wave of human ships dropped out of hyperspace. But these were different from the others, larger, more heavily armored, and emanating energy signatures that made the bridge instruments struggle to maintain accurate readings. "Admiral," the sensor operator's voice cracked, I'm reading over 300 human ships now. And, sir, some of these new arrivals, the computer is classifying them as Dreadnought-class vessels. Ship-to-ship combat platforms. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases." Through the viewports, Krogar could see the human fleet spreading across space like a vast net, their formation encompassing his entire force. The elegant curves and flowing lines of their ships stood in stark contrast to the brutal functionality of Krogan design, but there was no mistaking their purpose. For the first time in his career, Fleet Admiral Krogar began to understand that he might have made a terrible mistake. The species he had dismissed as weak farmers and explorers was revealing capabilities that defied everything the Krogan Empire thought it knew about the galaxy. And they were still coming. Captain Chen's exploration vessel Harmony's Edge had been transformed. What had begun as a peaceful scientific mission was now serving as a forward reconnaissance platform, its sensors reaching deep into enemy formations to provide targeting data for the massive human fleet that continued to pour out of hyperspace. The bridge hummed with quiet efficiency as her crew worked alongside newly arrived military specialists who had transferred aboard during the fleet's rapid assembly. Lieutenant Rodriguez now wore a tactical headset, coordinating with fire control officers aboard the dreadnoughts. The young communications officer who had decoded the original Zilani distress call was now serving as a liaison between exploration and military command structures. "Captain," Rodriguez reported, "Admiral Reeves is requesting real-time intelligence on Krogan fleet dispositions. The big ships need targeting priorities." Chen nodded, studying the tactical displays that now dominated her bridge. The Krogan formation was beginning to show signs of strain. What had started as an organized invasion fleet was becoming something closer to a desperate defensive cluster as more human ships arrived every few minutes. The numbers were staggering. Chen had witnessed the arrival of vessels she had never imagined existed, massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything in the exploration fleet, sleek destroyers that moved through space like living predators, and carrier groups that launched fighter craft in numbers that darkened the stars themselves. "The Krogan are concentrating their heaviest ships around their flagship," Chen observed, highlighting the formation on the tactical display. "They're trying to create a defensive sphere, but they're leaving their flanks exposed." Through the viewports, she could see the human fleet maneuvering with a precision that spoke of decades of tactical refinement. Each ship knew its role, each formation moved with purpose. It was like watching a vast organism respond to threat, fluid, adaptive, and utterly ruthless in its efficiency. The transformation of humanity's peaceful image was complete. The species that had joined the Galactic Friendship Coalition as explorers and agricultural specialists was revealing military capabilities that redefined the balance of power in the galaxy. Every human vessel, from the smallest courier ship to the massive dreadnoughts, had been designed with dual purposes in mind. What appeared to be exploration equipment could be rapidly reconfigured for combat operations. "Ma'am," called Chief Petty Officer Williams from the sensor station, "I'm reading massive power buildups across the fleet. The dreadnoughts are charging their primary weapon systems." Chen felt a chill of anticipation. She had heard rumors about the weapons carried by humanity's largest warships, devices that could crack planets or ignite stars. The technology was supposedly derived from theoretical research into dark matter manipulation, but she had never imagined she would see it deployed. Admiral Reeves' voice came through the communication system, her words carrying to every human ship in the fleet. "All vessels, this is Fleet Command. The Krogan Empire has chosen to ignore our warnings and continue their attacks against coalition members. They have classified our peaceful nature as weakness. Today, we remind the galaxy why Earth is designated a Class 12 death world. On the tactical display, Chen watched as the human dreadnoughts aligned themselves for maximum effect. Their targeting systems locked onto the largest Krogan vessels, the ones that had been systematically destroying Zilani cities and infrastructure. There would be no warning shots, no gradual escalation. When humans decided to fight, they fought to win. Primary weapons are locked and loaded, Rodriguez reported. All ships report ready for synchronized attack. The first salvo from the human fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The dreadnoughts fired their dark matter cannons simultaneously, each shot tearing through spacetime itself to impact the Krogan formation with devastating effect. Where the beams touched enemy ships, matter simply ceased to exist, leaving perfect spherical voids that glowed with exotic radiation. 3 Krogan heavy cruisers vanished instantly, their molecular structures unraveled by weapons that operated on principles most species couldn't even comprehend. The secondary explosions from their power cores lit up the surrounding space like miniature suns. But the human fleet was just getting started. The destroyers and frigates opened fire with conventional weapons, though conventional was a relative term when dealing with technology developed by a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of warfare. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to significant fractions of light speed punched through Krogan armor like it was made of paper. Energy beams that could melt asteroids carved enemy ships into scrap metal. "Sir," reported the Krogan sensor operator aboard the Void Render, his voice barely audible over the sounds of alarms and emergency systems, "we've lost 9 ships in the first exchange. The human weapons, they're using technology we don't understand. Dark matter manipulation, gravimetric distortion fields, kinetic impactors moving at relativistic speeds." Fleet Admiral Krogar stared at the tactical display in growing horror. His invasion fleet, which had seemed unstoppable against the peaceful Zilani, was being systematically destroyed by weapons that defied conventional understanding. Each human ship fought with the efficiency of a machine and the cunning of a predator. "Return fire!" Krogar roared. "All ships, concentrate on the largest human vessels. Show them that the Krogan Empire." His words were cut off as the bridge shook violently. Through the viewports, he could see one of the human dreadnoughts bearing down on his position, its sleek hull bristling with weapon emplacements. The ship was beautiful in its lethality, flowing organic curves that housed systems capable of destroying entire worlds. Commander Vex stumbled across the tilting deck, his face pale with shock. "Admiral, our shields are down to 30%. The humans are using some kind of adaptive targeting system. Each shot is more effective than the last." Around them, the Krogan fleet was dying. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were being torn apart by enemies they had dismissed as weak farmers. The humans fought with a cold efficiency that spoke of extensive combat experience, but also with something else, an underlying fury that came from seeing friends threatened. "Sir," the communications officer called out desperately, "we're receiving surrender offers from 6 of our escort vessels. They're requesting permission to withdraw." Krogar's mandibles clicked together in rage. "The Krogan Empire does not surrender. Signal all ships to maintain formation and continue the attack. We are warriors. We do not flee from." The Void Render lurched as another human weapon strike found its target. This time, the shot came from one of the smaller vessels, a ship that the Krogan intelligence had classified as a simple exploration cruiser. But the weapon that struck Krogar's flagship was anything but simple. The blast punched through the ship's primary armor belt and detonated deep within the vessel's core systems. Secondary explosions rippled through the engineering sections, and the lights on the bridge flickered as power systems struggled to compensate for catastrophic damage. "Engineering reports massive system failures," Vex reported, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Hull breaches on 7 decks. We're venting atmosphere and losing structural integrity." Through the chaos, Krogar could see the human fleet continuing its methodical destruction of his forces. They weren't just winning, they were demonstrating a level of technological and tactical superiority that made the battlefield less like a military engagement and more like an extermination. But it was the way they fought that truly terrified him. There was no hesitation, no mercy, no quarter given. The humans had come to defend their friends, and they would accept nothing less than the complete destruction of anyone who threatened them. "Admiral," the sensor operator called out, voice cracking with stress, "I'm reading additional human reinforcements arriving. Estimate 50 more vessels dropping out of hyperspace."
Including, sir, I think those are mobile battle stations. Planet Killer class vessels. Krogar felt his heart skip a beat. Planet killers were theoretical weapons, devices so destructive that even the Krogan Empire had never attempted to build them. The energy requirements alone should have made such weapons impossible to deploy. But, there they were on the tactical display, massive structures that dwarfed even the largest dreadnoughts, their energy signatures off the scale of anything the sensors could properly measure. As he watched, one of the battle stations began to rotate, bringing what appeared to be a primary weapon to bear on his fleet. Admiral, Commander Vex said quietly, we need to withdraw. This isn't a battle anymore. It's an execution. For the first time in his career, Fleet Admiral Krogar found himself facing a truth he had never imagined. The Krogan Empire had encountered a species that was stronger, more advanced, and more ruthless than they were. The humans had hidden their true nature behind peaceful exploration and diplomatic cooperation, but, when their friends were threatened, they revealed capabilities that redefined what was possible. Open a channel to the human commander, Krogar said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. We need to discuss terms. But, even as he spoke, he could see more human ships arriving, their formation spreading across the star system like a net designed to ensure that nothing escaped. The beings that the galaxy had dismissed as peaceful farmers were revealing themselves to be something far more dangerous, a species that had survived on one of the most hostile worlds in the galaxy, and had never forgotten how to fight. The distress call had been sent to friends. But, what had arrived was an armada of destruction that would ensure the Krogan Empire never threatened the coalition again. Admiral Sarah Reeves stood in the command center of her flagship, the Terra's Wrath, watching the final moments of what historians would later call the Battle of Zalera Prime. Around her, dozens of officers coordinated the movements of over 400 human vessels, their combined firepower sufficient to sterilize entire star systems. The Krogan fleet was broken. Of the 30 warships that had arrived to terrorize the peaceful Zalani, only 8 remained functional, and those were desperately broadcasting surrender signals on all frequencies. The proud warriors who had spent centuries conquering weaker species now faced the reality of their own mortality. Admiral, reported Commander Marcus Kane, her chief tactical officer, were receiving a communication from the Krogan flagship. Fleet Admiral Krogar is requesting terms for surrender. Reeves studied the tactical display, noting the positions of the surviving enemy vessels. They had clustered around their damaged flagship in a defensive formation that spoke more of desperation than military strategy. The beings who had dismissed humanity as weak farmers were learning what it meant to face a species that had evolved on a world where everything was designed to kill them. Put him through, Reeves ordered. But, make sure he can see our battle stations charging their primary weapons. The main viewscreen flickered to life, revealing the Krogan Admiral's bridge. The once pristine command center was now a maze of damaged equipment and emergency lighting. Krogar himself looked haggard, his chitinous armor cracked and stained with what appeared to be his own blood. Admiral Reeves, Krogar began, his voice carrying none of the arrogance that had marked their first communication. We request terms for surrender. My fleet will withdraw from Coalition space and, no, Reeves interrupted, her voice cutting through the transmission like a blade. You don't understand your situation, Admiral Krogar. This isn't a negotiation. This is judgment. She gestured to the tactical display visible in the background of her transmission. You see those vessels approaching your position? Those are our mobile battle stations. Each one carries enough firepower to crack a planet. They were built because humans learned long ago that sometimes peace requires the ability to utterly destroy anyone who threatens it. Krogar's four eyes widened as the implications sank in. But, the Coalition's principles, the friendship protocols, you cannot simply, the friendship protocols work both ways, Admiral, Reeves said coldly. The Zalani called us friends, and we answered. But, friendship also means protecting those who cannot protect themselves. It means ensuring that predators like your empire understand that some prey is too dangerous to hunt. On the bridge of Captain Chen's Harmony's Edge, the crew watched the exchange with a mixture of fascination and horror. The transformation of their peaceful exploration mission into a demonstration of humanity's hidden military might have been complete, but the implications were only beginning to sink in. Captain, Lieutenant Rodriguez whispered, are we really going to destroy their entire fleet? Chen considered the question carefully. Around them, the massive human armada held position with the patience of predators waiting for their moment to strike. Every ship in the fleet was a testament to humanity's dual nature, peaceful explorers when left alone, but utterly ruthless when their friends were threatened.
The Krokan Empire has built its entire civilization on the conquest of peaceful species, Jen replied quietly. They see cooperation as weakness and diplomacy as cowardice. The only language they understand is force. As if to emphasize her point, one of the human battle stations fired a demonstration shot not at the Krokan fleet, but at a dead moon orbiting the system's outer planets. The massive beam of exotic energy struck the celestial body and simply erased it from existence, leaving behind only glowing particles of exotic matter. The effect on the Krokan survivors was immediate and devastating. Even their strongest warriors could conceive of weapons that could destroy ships or cities, but the casual annihilation of an entire moon was beyond their comprehension. Impossible, Commander Vex breathed from his position beside Krogar. No species possesses that level of destructive capability. The energy requirements alone would require the resources of an entire solar system, Admiral Reeves finished, her voice carrying across the communication link. Which is exactly what humanity committed to this operation. You attacked our friends, Admiral Krogar. You threatened people who welcomed us into the galactic community with open arms and shared their knowledge freely. Did you really think we would allow that to go unanswered? The truth was finally beginning to dawn on the surviving Krokan officers. Humanity hadn't just hidden their military capabilities, they had actively disguised their true nature. Every exploration vessel was a potential warship. Every agricultural colony was a military base in disguise. Every diplomatic mission was intelligence gathering for a species that had never stopped preparing for war. But your classification, Krogar protested weakly. The galactic databases list Earth as an agricultural world. Your people are explorers, scientists, farmers. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world, Reeves corrected. A planet so hostile to life that simply surviving there requires adaptability, resilience, and a capacity for violence that most civilized species evolved away from millions of years ago. We are agricultural specialists because we learned to grow food on a world that actively tries to poison everything that lives there. We are explorers because we had to map territories filled with predators that could kill us in 1,000 different ways. She paused, letting the implications sink in. And we are warriors because on Earth, everything that lives has to be ready to fight for its existence every single day. The communication channel fell silent as the Krokan officers absorbed this information. Around them, the human fleet maintained its positions with mechanical precision, hundreds of vessels holding formation while their weapons systems remained trained on the surviving enemy ships. Admiral Krogar looked older than his years as he finally spoke. What are your terms? Unconditional surrender of all Krokan forces in this system, Reeves replied without hesitation. Complete withdrawal from all coalition territory. Reparations to be paid to the Zilani Republic for damages inflicted during your unprovoked attack. And, most importantly, a formal treaty recognizing the sovereignty of all coalition member species. And, if we refuse? Reeves gestured toward the tactical display showing the positions of her battle stations. Then, we demonstrate to the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity's friends. The choice is yours, Admiral, but choose quickly. My patience is not infinite. Krogar looked around his damaged bridge, seeing the fear in the eyes of officers who had once thought themselves the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy. The Krokan Empire had built its reputation on the conquest of peaceful species, but they had never encountered anything like humanity. We accept your terms, Krogar said finally, his voice barely audible. Excellent, Reeves replied. You will transfer command of your surviving vessels to my officers for inspection. Any attempts at sabotage or further resistance will result in immediate destruction. Your ships will then escort you back to Krokan Space under guard, where you will deliver our formal demands to your government. As the defeated Krokan fleet began the humiliating process of surrendering to their former prey, Admiral Reeves opened a new communication channel to the Zilani leadership on the surface of their homeworld. The response came quickly, a holographic image of first speaker Melodia, the Zilani Republic's highest-ranking official. The elderly alien's bioluminescent features were dim with exhaustion and stress, but there was profound relief in her crystalline eyes. Admiral Reeves, Melodia said, her voice carrying the musical quality that made Zilani speech so distinctive, we cannot adequately express our gratitude. When we sent the distress call, we hoped for assistance, but we never imagined. You called us friends, first speaker, Reeves replied gently, her tone softening for the first time since the battle began. And humans never abandon their friends. The Krokan Empire learned today that some friendships come with consequences for those who threaten them. But, the cost, Melodia protested. Your fleet, your resources, your people all deployed to defend a species that has nothing to offer in return for such protection. Reeves smiled, and, for a moment, the hardened military commander disappeared, replaced by the diplomat and explorer that humanity preferred to show the galaxy.
First speaker, you have already given us more than you know. You welcomed us into the galactic community.
You shared your medical knowledge freely.
You showed us that cooperation was possible between species with very different backgrounds.
She gestured toward the viewport, where repair ships were already beginning to assist damaged Solani vessels.
Besides, defending our friends isn't a transaction. It's who we are.
As the immediate crisis passed and the human fleet began the process of securing the system, Captain Chen found herself reflecting on the day's events.
The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again.
The peaceful farmers and explorers had revealed themselves to be something far more complex and dangerous.
But perhaps that was necessary.
The universe was full of predators like the Krokan Empire, species that saw cooperation as weakness and friendship as an opportunity for exploitation. Sometimes, peace required the ability to utterly destroy anyone who threatened it.
Captain, Rodriguez said quietly, what happens now?
I mean, everyone in the galaxy is going to know what happened here. Shen considered the question as she watched human ships taking the Krokan survivors into custody. Now we go back to being explorers and farmers and diplomats, she said finally. But everyone will know that underneath that peaceful exterior lies something that evolution forged in the crucible of the most dangerous world in the galaxy. She turned to face her crew, all of whom had performed admirably during their first taste of actual combat. The Krokan Empire thought they could prey on our friends because they mistook our peaceful nature for weakness. They learned today that humans are peaceful by choice, not by necessity.
And, when that choice is taken away from us. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone on the bridge had seen what happened when humanity's peaceful facade was stripped away.
They had witnessed the transformation of exploration vessels into warships, of diplomats into warriors, of farmers into the most dangerous military force the galaxy had ever seen. The distress call had been for friends. And, friends of humanity, the species that had survived and thrived on a world that spent every moment trying to kill them, never faced their enemies alone. In the weeks that followed, the story of the Battle of Zalera Prime spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire. The Krokan Empire, humbled and broken, retreated to their outer rim territories and began the long process of paying reparations to their victims. Other aggressive species took note of what had happened when humans were forced to abandon their peaceful facade. But, for the Zalani, and for every other member of the Galactic Friendship Coalition, the lesson was simpler and more reassuring. In a universe full of dangers, they had found friends who would move heaven and earth to protect them. And, sometimes, that friendship came with the power to destroy entire star systems.